His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 5, Text number 40. Netam Pumsam Viraga Siyat. Netam Pumsam Viraga Siyat. Tvaya Kevalina Mrisha. Tvaya Kevalina Mrisha. Manyase Yadi Upashamam. Manyasyadi Upashamam. Manyasyeyadiyupashamam Sneha Pasha Nikrintanam Sneha Pasha Nikrintanam Netam Pumsam Viragasyat Tvaya Kevalinam Risha Manyasye Yadiyupashamam Sneha Pasha Nikrintanam Netam Pumsam Viragasyat Tvaya Kevalinam Risha Manyasye Yadyupashamam Sneha Pasha Nikrintanam Netam Pumsam Viragasyat Tvaya Kevalinam Risha Manyasye Yadyupashamam Sneha Pasha Nikrintanam Netam Pumsam Viragasyat Tvaya Kevalinam Risha Manyasye Yadyupashamam. Tvaya Kevalinam Risha Manyasye Yadyupashamam Sneha Pasha Nikrintanam Netam Pumsam Viragasyat Tvaya Kevalinam Risha Manyasye Yadyupashamam Sneha Pasha Nikrintanam. Vaishnavis. Netam Pumsam Viragasyat Tvaya Kevalinam Risha Manyasye Yadyupashamam Sneha Pasha Nikrintanam. Na, not in this way. Pumsam of persons. Viragaha, renunciation. Syad is possible. Tvaya, by you. Kevalinam Risha, possessing knowledge falsely. Manyase, you think. Yadi, if. Upashamam, renunciation of material enjoyments. Sneha Pasha, the bonds of affection. Nikrintanam, cutting. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prajapati Daksha continued, if you think that simply awakening the sense of renunciation will detach one from the material world, I must say that unless full knowledge is awakened, simply changing dresses as you have done cannot possibly bring detachment. Purport. Prajapati Daksha was correct in stating that changing one's dress cannot detach one from this material world. The sannyasis of Kali Yuga who change their robes from white to saffron and then think they can do whatever they like are more abominable than materialistic grihastas. This is not recommended anywhere. Prajapati Daksha was right in pointing out this defect, but he did not know that Narada Muni had aroused the spirit of renunciation in the Haryashvas and Sava Lashvas through full knowledge. Such enlightened renunciation is desirable. One should enter the renounced order with full knowledge, jnana, vairagya. For the perfection of life is possible for one who renounces this material world in that way. This elevated stage can be reached very easily, as supported by the statements of Srimad Bhagavatam 127. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayatyashu Vairagyam Gyanam Chayad Ahaitukam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. If one seriously engages in devotional service to Lord Vasudev, jnana and vairagya are automatically manifest in one's person. There is no doubt of this. Prajapati Daksha's accusation that Narada had not actually elevated his sons to the platform of knowledge was not factual. All the sons of Prajapati Daksha had first been raised to the platform of jnana and hadn't automatically renounced this world. In summary, unless one's knowledge is awakened, renunciation cannot take place. For without elevated knowledge, one cannot give up attachment for material enjoyment. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Tantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shraddha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Mitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripata Muhammade Shri Gurum Dina Taranam. So the translation again. Prajapati Daksha continued, if you think that simply awakening the sense of renunciation will detach one from the material world, I must say that unless full knowledge is awakened, simply changing dresses as you have done cannot possibly bring detachment. So there's a couple lessons here that we learning before we enter the topic of renunciation. I also like to touch a topic of self-management a little bit. Self-management is required. It's also it's another way of saying self-control or controlling one's mind. So what's happening here with Daksha he actually becomes upset and angry. There's a few causes of getting anger, like attachment, some unfulfilled expectation, some frustrated desire. So he becomes upset, and as we can see, and we all also experience ourselves when we are when we are upset or angry or kind of emotionally overwhelmed, we act out of the norm. We don't act in a way that we would normally act in circumstances when we are not upset. And you can see here, Prajapati Daksha is because of his attachment to the sons, and also not only that. One is he had attachment to the sons, and the sons left. Another attachment he had this desire that the sons will do something that he wanted. He had a particular expectation that the sons gonna do, and they didn't do it. That was another his frustration. Another frustration was that somebody interfered with his activity. He had a certain plan, a certain arrangement, and certain setup to populate the universe, and somebody came and interfered and messed up kind of his plan. These few things caused him to become upset. And what happens when we are upset and frustrated? Then we can say things for which we later may regret or may offend other people. So in this case, Daksha is actually offending and using very kind of harsh and impolite and inappropriate words to be said to the saintly person. Is kind of accusing Narada this and another and a third thing, although Narada actually has fulfilled his purpose. As we can see initially in the verses before, it was mentioned, and Javat Vasik has kindly brought up as well, that his purpose was in due course of time. He wanted to populate the universe, for the children to go to Grihastha ashram, and then eventually develop transcendental knowledge, and eventually to become detached and attain liberation. So and Narada Muni just give a shortcut to those boys. So actually his goal has been fulfilled, but he couldn't see that. He couldn't see the long-term benefit of what Narada Muni did. He just looked in the short term. So he was very upset, and he was acting out of this norm. And if you look in our life, the biggest mistakes that we make, personally speaking, when we are kind of upset or disturbed or out of norm or frustrated, we say things to people that we should not say, or we later we regret why we said that. And also there is an extra dimension in devotee association, in terms of what we say, because devotees are there to Krishna, and therefore there is a lot more involved than saying some nasty thing to not a devotee. Is one thing, but when you say something not very appropriate for devotee, there's a more kind of karmic reaction involved. And usually, as unload and of that frustration, various types of words come out, and we cannot even judge the situation so appropriately when we are under a kind of emotional turmoil, and may say things that are not actually the case. Because before we get disturbed, everything was fine. We were even tolerating the person that was, as in whatever way, kind of our friend. But when the provocation happened, then we may kind of misjudge situation. So there is two, of course, things. There is for the person that is becoming disturbed, and for other people who are becoming like an object of somebody's disturbance. In a devotee association, we try to help each other. We try to help each other in that situation. We don't kind of punish a person who is disturbed or etc., but we try to see what is going on. And for a person who is becoming an object of somebody's disturbance, then it is opportunity to try to understand actually often certain needs or unfulfilled desires becomes expressed at that point. because the challenge that we are facing, especially in this part of the world, we are not so expert in communicating of what is actually our needs. And maybe sometimes it can be coming from parenting, because in one sense, parents are very, very focused, and especially like a mother and a father as well, they're very focused in what the child needs, especially when the child is small. And we can kind of grow up in that situation that almost we don't have to worry so much to express what we need, because it's like parents are on the ball, and mother is on the ball to fulfill our needs. Especially we cannot even speak for first few years, a couple of years, we cannot even express what you want. So like a mother or father as well can become so much in tune of what we need, so you don't even have to express it. And then when we start growing up a little bit more, then we fulfill our needs by crying. Ah! And then we get what we want. Isn't it like if I want to eat, or I want this toy, I just start crying, ah, I want this, I want this, I want this. And with the parents, that's why the parenting is such a challenge. If you every time the child cries, if he gets what he wants, it becomes this expectation, I always get what I want by becoming upset. It creates this like a almost uh, you know automatic response. Automatic response develops in us. If I um, want to get what I want, I become upset, and then I get what I want. But in parenting, sometimes you fulfill, and of course, I don't know anything about it in one sense. I'm just from what I observed. So sometimes one sort of intelligence is that you don't have to go through experience, but you can observe. There's one type of intelligence, you can observe and make your conclusions. So sometimes the parents who are very expert, they don't give to child what they want, so they learn that you don't always get what you want. So it's actually a lot kinder for a child, and from parenting point of view, to not give always what they want, because that's life. You not always get what you want in life. So child learns, then sometimes you get what you want, and sometimes you don't get what you want, and sometimes you have to work for it to get what you want, and you have to turn to tolerate when you don't get what you want, and not to become too much overwhelmed and disturbed materially. And then we also can learn as we become mature. We go from this childhood stage when we don't things are taking care for us, and then we cry to get what we want, and then we grow further, uh, and then as we become further mature in our life, or we should become further mature, then we can actually express as well and communicate of what are actually needs, and understand ourselves, of course, what is my need. It's because sometimes we don't even understand, because we haven't looked into it. We get used to that other people fulfill our needs, and etc. So we have to learn to understand what are those needs, um, and then uh, we learn how to fulfill them. And that's also in Krishna consciousness, and until we reach the platform, because we're speaking about detachment, until we reach platform of pure devotional service, there's a certain needs that will be there. Bhaktivinoda Thakur brings them up. There is some physical needs, there is some social needs, there is some intellectual, mental stimulation required as a study of Shastra, like that. So this, four things: physical needs, uh, emotional, or it's like a social needs, mental stimulation, intellectual stimulation by studying Shastra. So when these are fulfilled, then we are more peaceful and satisfied and able to handle things. And then also we learn to communicate to other people those needs. But if we are not learn to communicate so well, And also, because we are not pure devotees, we are not in a mode of goodness, then those needs can come out in a little bit with anger or frustration, and it can come out verbally. But as devotees, we also, when somebody does that, we can be very forgiving, because we are devotees. We understand this person's needs hasn't been fulfilled, so let me be now, um, look behind whatever frustration has come out, or anger. Look behind those external words that sometimes can be a bit hurting, but we tolerate, and then we look what actually the person needs and his opportunity for service. So of course it has been communicated, not maybe in a very nice way, but we can actually look beyond those external words, and then render service to a person, to satisfy their needs. So this is from a point of view a person who has become a recipient of that frustration, and a person who is on the other side, or who's becoming frustrated. Then it's a learning experience. All the lower expectations sometimes, from other people. It may not be They may not be very psychic. The other people around us, they not be psychic to know what we need. Sometimes we think, you should know, or she should know of what I need, or what I'm going through. But you know, while devotees are, God sensitive people, they're not necessarily psychic to know exactly what you're going through, because also everybody's going through something. So when you're going through something and somebody else is going through something, you may be so much absorbed in what you are going through that you're not sufficiently aware or always 100% conscious, because we are like a fully conscious of what we're going through, at least to some extent, unless we're completely in tamaguna and just don't know what's going on around us. So to some extent we are conscious, but other people, they are going through their thing and may not be so aware, because unless you're a pure devotee, there's a certain degree of self-absorption in what's going on in your life, that you're not maybe always conscious of what other people going on, or at least at every moment. So therefore some communication is very, very helpful, to communicate, I am going through this, and or remind other people, because you may also dealing with so many people every day, like 5, 10, especially if in a management situation, you're dealing with so many people, you may not be at every moment fully conscious of what other person is going through. So it's just like expressing, I'm going through this. It can be very helpful. And then it's just like you would go to the doctor. You go to the doctor, even if he knows you well, you can't necessarily know. You may know all the history of your sickness, but maybe you came up with something new. How the doctor supposed to know? You can expect, the doctor is asking a question, how you feeling, and you said, no, just give me the medicine. You should know, you're the doctor. uh, so that expectation will be very difficult to meet. So you have to let know doctor the symptoms that you're going through. Of course, it doesn't happen so much in England. The doctor will give you medicine straight away before you open your mouth. You just look into the watch. Or I mean, in Great Britain, is already you entering there, is already looking to the watch. Your 60 seconds is about to expire. So better as quick as possible give you medicine. But speaking. Now how to address actually not getting angry and frustrated and all sorts of emotions that can come because of attachment, expectation, is to become detached, which is what is spoken in a purport. And of course we have to analyze it, how you need to get motivated as well, because sometimes this detachment is very scary word, unless you are Panchatattva Prabhu, then he loves this word detachment. I'm just joking. um, so it can be a little bit scary because detachment feels, oh, I like something, and detachment seems I have to deprive myself from what I like. So you think, no, thank you. It's like almost subconscious response, no thanks. I don't want to let go of what I like. So you have to analyze, what's the benefit we're gonna get by cultivating detachment. And one of them is that we may not hurt the people who are dear to us, or may not hurt the people who are dear to Krishna, and or we won't hurt ourselves. Because the more we become detached, the more we are not less hurt, and we less hurt other people, and we feel less frustrated, and etc. It's a very nice motivating factor. But more than that is that we're not just concerned about detachment, because Mayavadis and personalists, they also about that, but actually we make space for Krishna to come, because our minds and our consciousness are, as actually yesterday we were discussing with Muli Manohar Prabhu about the nature of the mind, and reading a little bit about the nature of the mind. The mind enters the sense objects, and sometimes it acquires that shape of the sense object in your mind, and the sense objects enter in your mind. So it's like this mutual reciprocation is spontaneous. Just like pure devotees are spontaneously attached to Krishna, that very same spontaneity becomes replaced by sense object. So we still are inclined to be spontaneously attracted to something, but when we give up Krishna, that becomes replaced with a sense object that we feel a spontaneous attraction. So when we reduce that detachment and let go, we make space for Krishna to come, and we fill that space and that gap with Krishna. And as we more and more become detached and let go impurities and etc., then there is a more and more ability and to remain focused on Krishna and have Krishna in your mind. And that spontaneous attraction to sense objects then becomes transitions to the spontaneous attraction to Krishna. And of course, Vaidya sadhana bhakti is that process that brings us to the pure devotional platform. So it's not the goal of bhakti to become detached, but is a significant and helpful principle that helps us to go on in Krishna consciousness and then fill our life with Krishna. And how to invoke that detachment. So as we spoke, some tools that we just spoke about, trying to lower expectations and etc., and maybe try to also press the pause button and not just express the verbal diarrhea on a person who disturbed us, but just give a little bit of time and space to a little bit calm down, and then we can communicate in a lot nicer way. But in order to even prevent and address the problem at the root, this detachment is awakened by devotional service. And please note that there is a word devotional in this in this two words, because sometimes we think just service that is gonna bring detachment, or just service that's gonna take me to the perfection. But no, there is a word, a keyword in that in the word. It says devotional. It's a devotional service, not just service. It's a devotional service. And so in order to make our service devotional, there is a certain things that are required. And it requires a quality hearing and chanting. That what spiritualizes the activity. Otherwise, it's a physical thing. You're cleaning the floor. How it is transcendental? What makes cleaning the floor transcendental? What makes cooking transcendental? What makes lifting things transcendental? Is a spiritualizing of our consciousness. that comes from hearing, quality hearing and chanting. So the quality, so sometimes you may think, okay, I cannot, this devotional service will bring detachment. But we may be like working already day and night, thinking, why the detachment coming and why I'm frustrated. It might be that devotional aspect is missing in it. The quality of hearing and chanting may be missing, and therefore, in order to reduce our frustration, disturbance, we need to increase the quality of our hearing and chanting. We may be already doing quantitatively very well, and we would like to congratulate whoever is doing that. But we need to increase the quality and absorption in hearing and chanting, and also associate with people who are absorbed, and that will help us to increase the quality, and that will bring a certain degree of detachment. And another thing that is, although it's a byproduct of quality hearing and chanting, but sometimes the quality is very difficult to increase, then we increase the transcendental knowledge. We study very, very carefully. We approach Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra can help us give us transcendental knowledge. So we hear from Guru, we hear from saintly person, and we hear from Shastra. And then as we start to see things in a different light, it brings detachment. And there are so many examples in Srimad Bhagavatam, like Maharaj Chitraketu, when he wanted so much sun, and we begged from the saintly people for a son. He didn't ask for transcendental knowledge, he begged for the son. And the son was born, and then the envious queens of that queen who gave birth, the other queens became envious and they poisoned the kid and died. And how distressed he was, how disturbed he was. But then the Angira Muni and Narada Muni, I believe, came uh, and they gave transcendental knowledge, and they become detached and great saintly person. So this because we're going through turmoil, going through so many challenges and etc. It doesn't mean that a few years later, or maybe in a shorter or a longer time, you could become a saintly person if you receive transcendental knowledge. As soon as there is some disturbance, as soon as we are dissatisfied, we should increase the quality of our devotion and increase hearing of transcendental knowledge, and that will address so many problems at the root. And of course, then maybe some tools may be required and necessary as well to become receptive more to this transcendental knowledge. So therefore, we are touching upon some other aspects as well. So are there any questions or comments on this? Ashish Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the class. One thing here it says, I must say that unless full knowledge is awakened, what does full knowledge mean? What is like full knowledge, and how can we attain that full knowledge?
Yes, thank you. So yeah, this is another aspect of when one is fully detached, when one has full knowledge and can give up this material world. So that is the goal of awakening, that full knowledge that leads us in a full detachment from matter and full attachment to spirit. Now, how to get there? It's a journey, and we can see with the potency of Narada Muni, he was able to awaken this full knowledge. And technically speaking, the full knowledge means realizing Krishna, because we can see even impersonalists who become completely detached from material world and attached to Brahman, attached to the impersonal light, and etc. Eventually, they come down. Even if they merge into impersonal existence of the Lord, eventually they come down because they lack attraction to Krishna, and this simply light and this energy and freedom from misery doesn't satisfy sufficiently the soul to remain in that situation. So you have to come down. So really full awakening of transcendental knowledge, it means the stage when you have become attracted to Krishna. That is full awakening of transcendental knowledge. Until that point, still the detachment is not mature. Something may come up that can attract you and disturb you. We see as well, Sobari Muni and some other sages who were meditating and apparently being detached when they saw sense objects in front of them. They became attracted to them. So it is a journey. It is a journey, and for some fortunate souls, maybe they are detached from a past life and they cultivated deeply devotional service, that they can in very early stages awaken their detachment. And we can see some of our very senior devotees and sannyasis, and they entered the renunciation early stage of life and they're able to maintain it, but some weren't able to maintain it too. So therefore it is a different the potential in the people, and you give a specific knowledge and they just immediately became renounced because they were ready for it. And then later on we will read about the king who was asked actually to get married, as well, to as a service to the Lord. So there are different circumstances, and therefore it requires expertise, and sometimes it just requires some time to see whether a potential is there. And also, so there is one person who already got detachment from past life, but then there is another person who can become detached by very good quality of hearing and chanting. Especially Srimad Bhagavatam is everything in there. The potency of Srimad Bhagavatam. When I was in 2018 in Vrindavan, to Vaisheshikas, went to this Vaisheshikas, Vaisheshika Brahma Kesha Bharati Maharaj. They took vow, 20 years ago, to hear and chant and study Bhagavatam and Prabhupada's books, for every Kartik. So I had the fortune somehow, by mercy of devotees, to be there. And they go through Bhagavatam, many chapters and many cantos in a short amount of space. And there's this one message actually is hammering in your head about complete detachment from matter and complete attachment to spirit, and specifically Krishna. This is all the essence of Bhagavatam. So when you actually enter the Bhagavatam spirit and and go deep and start absorbing it more and more and more, this is what you can awaken. You can awaken in your heart this genuine spirit of detachment, but more specifically attachment to Krishna, which is the essence of genuine renunciation. And then for a lot of people as well, you have to go through the different stages too to become fully detached. There is a grihastha ashram there as well. But the point, whichever that you enter renounced order in life from brahmachari or you enter from grihastha, still that is the goal of specifically attachment to Krishna, but detachment from matter as a tool to get there and make space for Krishna to become fully enter our minds and hearts. Yes, Prabhu.
Nice exchange with Srila Prabhupada. He's asking his disciples why these teachers cannot give Srimad Bhagavatam.
Sorry?
Why they can't convey the message of Bhagavatam. And none of the disciples get it at first, and then one of them realizes what Prabhupada's meaning, and he says, because they're not Bhaktivedanta. And then Prabhupada said, this is the point, Bhaktivedanta, because the anta of all Veda is bhakti.
Yes.
So knowledge on its own is of no real use unless it fructifies into prema, into pure love, into bhakti. So that's why they say to know Krishna is to love him. If you knew Krishna, then you would love him. The reason we don't love Krishna is because we don't know who he is. So we're hearing about him in the Bhagavatam and becoming more aware of his qualities, becoming more purified by chanting. But once you get full-blown darshan of Krishna, then you fall in love with him immediately because he's so irresistibly attractive. And that's the end of all knowledge.
Yes, nice point. Thank you. Yeah, actually, prema, Shivaram Swami explains in Acharyas, prema consists is actually two energies going on. While we know that it's a Gladini Shakti, pure devotion, it's a Gladini Shakti, pleasure potency of Krishna. So that's why we don't even own it. It's actually an energy of Krishna, and we're just able to experience it and express it for Krishna, but we're not 100% own it. That's why you cannot become proud of it. But there's also samvit energy, the cognizance. So it gives you that perception of how wonderful is Krishna, his qualities, his beauty. So there's these two energies going on at the same time, the cognizance and the pure devotion bhakti that kind of fires the prema, the pure devotion. Anything else? Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for class, Prabhu. I'm wondering, so in the process of detachment, you talk about it being a transformational experience. It's maybe not something that will just happen like that. So when trying to detach from matter, what's some of the what can we do in the meantime to kind of not make it more bearable, say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. That's a very nice question. So a few things. One is that there's this physical level. We have a four regulative principles are there. No intoxication, no gambling, no meat eating, no illicit sex. Some of them refers to more gross, and some of them some more emotional. Experiences. First step is to let maybe on a physical level, and then emotional is more difficult to fulfill. But one very powerful way is to satisfy our emotional needs is to hear Krishna's pastimes from Krishna book. You can make a point of hearing Krishna's pastimes, whether it's lecture when you're brushing your teeth. You can listen. There's a Krishna book recording by a few different devotees. You can listen. There is demons getting killed that gets killed in your heart, and also is described in Srimad Bhagavatam in the first canto that it can fulfill all the heart's hankerings by hearing Krishna's pastimes. And philosophy is there, on one hand to detach us from matter, but Krishna Lila is the positive aspect of it. You see, in the beginning, we are often very struggle and just become very much conscious and absorbed in this letting go. But there is another side, is the Krishna. So you have to strike the balance between the knowledge and miserable situation, this material world, and all other things. But then on the other side is that attraction to Krishna and hearing about Krishna and Krishna's pastimes. Then it helps us to navigate, between this painful stage. But one of the most essential motivating factors to keep us going is until we reach the spontaneous attraction, and then we didn't want to do it, is the instruction of the spiritual master, guru and sadhu and shastra. So therefore we should never become disconnected from it. And because without that, that removes something that, as Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is saying, this stick of the mercy of Vaishnavas keeps me going. And so it's not not speaking about a physical stick of beating someone, but it's about the instruction that keeps us going and keeps reminding us and keeps us focused on the goal. So we have to constantly remind us and remain connected with the instruction. And that's why, Prabhupada was so much studying of his books and, taking shelter of devotees. Mentorship system is being there introduced more and more. So I hope that answers your question. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande. Haribol.
Grace, Raghunatha Prabhu ki.
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki.
Jai.
Jai.